Anytime. Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Bartlett. I'm the CEO and founder of What the Fast. We help optimize online game connections to make multiplayer seamless. And today, I'm thrilled to chat with two legends in gaming and innovation. We'll start off with Nolan Bushnell. He's the founder of Atari and Chuck E. Cheese, a serial internet entrepreneur, or entrepreneur, I guess, before the internet as well. He's been around a while. Who's helped shape entertainment for generations. He's currently chairman of Exodexa, founder of Atari and Chuck E. Cheese. And Exodexa is an AI-powered platform revolutionizing education through games. Nolan, welcome.
Great to be here. And, you know, I'm always happy to talk with you, Rob, because I've always really enjoyed your mind, you know, because you have, you know, I've been on your board for 100 years, it seems like.
I love that, yeah.
Anyway, one of the things that has always been an interesting question to me is when you come to really, really good gaming, milliseconds count,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and every router hop takes a little bit of latency into the world. And so what the fast to get rid of latency is, or minimize it, you can't get rid of it because unfortunately it's still, and you always have the speed of light, which is the other thing that you're not going to get rid of easily. But router hops we can minimize.
Yep, that I totally agree with that. It'd be great if we could transport packets faster than the speed of light, but right now that's not really possible. We'll see. Maybe with quantum we'll be able to figure something out, but that's some ways away, I guess.
You know, I've heard a couple of physicists saying that you know, the spooky effect of the distance and quantum entanglement, that which is always crowded with the whole idea of the Ansible, that in fact the physics doesn't allow you to have information on it. I don't understand it,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm sad if it's true.
Well, imagine being able to do instantaneous communication with a rover on Mars, right? That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
We'd be able to send robots instead of people, so that would be interesting if we could actually accomplish that. But like to your point, it doesn't seem like it's possible, but you never know, I guess. So our first meeting was at Disneyland, which was really fun. So I remember you pulling out Pokemon Go and, you know, thought it looked like a lot of fun. You know, I ended up getting hooked on that game as well. I figured, well, if Nolan can play it, maybe I can too. And you know, it was great seeing you at Disneyland. I wonder if you have any thoughts regarding Disneyland and why you still like to go there sometimes.
Well, I think that it's important to maintain playfulness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because sometimes you have to lubricate your mind a little bit into a world of what can be as opposed to the world that is. And that's why I kind of recommend people to read science fiction, because, mm-hmm. you know, cool stuff is being constantly invented in science fiction long before you can actually do it in physicality. And so that's one. I think Burning Man is one. And I think Disneyland is one. Mm-hmm. Just kind of lubricates your brain a little bit, that what does future world actually look like? You know, when you walk around Epcot to all the different places, I think lubricates your mind.
It makes sense. Well, the lubricated mind makes a lot of sense. So let's move on to Darcy. So Darcy is the chairman and president of What the Fast, also president at Fiber Gaming Network, helping networks to level up gamers. He's a figure in esports, including ties to the world's fastest gamer, bridging virtual racing to pro motorsports. There's a movie that was out recently about this topic. Great, Darcy, it's great to have you here.
Nice to be here, Rob. What you want me to give you a little background
Sure.
on me?
Sure. Maybe tell me about the world's fastest gamer or something exciting about your background.
Sure. I guess I'll start with the real racing, because that's where the incentive came to create these gamified experiences for racers and ultimately turn gamers into racers. So we had, a lot of experience in racing and streaming and real-time experiences. And back in, I guess, 15 years ago seems like a century now with the technology changes, but it was a real lift to figure out how to combine a game and a real experience. And of course, simulation was the answer. Not so easy back then. We had to build simulators. We had to figure out how the games adapted to these things, and everything had to be real time, because it doesn't matter if you're racing in a real car at 200 miles an hour or a virtual car. You have the same effect. If you miss a few milliseconds, you're going to be off the track or crashing. So we had to figure out a lot of that before we could actually create this experience. The GT Academy, which was heavily involved with Gran Turismo game, and then World's Fastest Gamer, where we pivoted to some Microsoft games, always relied on that we could make that virtual experience exactly like the racing experience. And having a history in putting cars on the track and training real racers really helped to figure out what we're going to do with this thing called virtual racing. But nothing changed from what we did even 30 years ago with streaming. It had to be real time. Couldn't have latency or packet loss. And the experience had to be like it was if you were doing the real thing. And, when I met you, obviously that was what you guys did well and had patents for. And I was real excited to be able to join the team and help bring some of this experience we had in simulation into this gaming experience. And, they are kind of merged together, but simulation and skills development is very different from gaming and STEM. I'll call it STEM development, or developing the mind. In the end, they come together very nicely, but hopefully in this conversation today between Nolan and yourself and I, we can, put the two together in some meaningful way for the crowd that's listening.
Awesome. That all sounds good to me. So we first met at CES, such an amazing place to check out the latest in AI, automation, and technology. What's the coolest thing that you have ever seen at CES? Anywhere from years ago to last year.
Man, the time has passed over the years I've gone there. I think the first time I went to CES was probably 1992 or something like that. And of course, for me, I'm always looking for innovations that shrink time, make things easier, take old things that you're doing and make them better. And, that's been things along the way. I mean, the first streams, people that stream things real time in the late 90s were amazing. You could see this thing that wasn't on a broadcast signal on a computer screen. And, I'd say that was a huge innovation. And I was fortunate enough to be able to be involved in early days of streaming and did that for quite a while. Obviously, video itself, taking video and packing it into these streams was all by itself innovations. It wasn't just CES, it was NAB. There was lots of conferences back in the day, and CES now today is, I think, the place to go if you're going to try and figure out what is going on in comms, media, and technology, which is kind of where I've had the good fortune to be in. In recent years, probably if I went backwards, last year, AI. I mean, it was AI everywhere. The year before, AI everywhere. It doesn't matter where you went. If they're building lawn tractors or, computers or whatever they're doing at CES, it had some AI to it, which, makes sense. I think it touches everything more than most people that aren't paying attention care to notice, but it's coming fast. And I think the other part, and even last year, but for sure the year before, was augmented reality. This convergence that we're in of gaming and real experiences and learning is about that. It's a convergence of those things, and that set of glasses that we're going to wear instead of a phone is coming pretty fast. I'm sure this year we'll see a lot more of that, and I think that makes it easier for both of our thesis, of training people. They don't have to think about a new device or figuring it out. Just put on these devices and look at something, and you can learn something. And hopefully that also will include some experience that's fun, and that's why I like gaming. And I followed that for so many years, is because, the Consumer Electronics Show for sure presents something for you every year to think about. Some of it lasts, some of it doesn't. Some of it takes longer than they think it's going to take. I mean, my first virtual reality headsets, I think I saw maybe 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody said it's going to be the next thing in television, and they built VR TVs, and you know, it's still coming, but it's created a lot of other opportunities. The money that went into creating virtual reality experiences, the first headsets, I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars, and we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for those kind of investments. And CES for me is the place to see. I think Nolan said it. You know, science fiction movies is another place I look, but I definitely look at CES as a bellwether for what's going to happen next year and what's going to happen in the next couple decades. This last probably 5 CESs has been about augmented or mixed reality, you know, networks, streaming still there big time. Compute itself has become, you know, kind of buried in it, but that's important. And the networks, like, you know, like what the Fast has is critical to the next generation of experiences. It will be virtual, and it will be on a screen or in a headset coming to you real soon.
So what do you think, Nolan, about CES and the latest tech?
Well, I think that this last weekend, I was with my boys, and one of them lives in Seattle, and the other one in Portland. And they're both very, very current, if you would. And my oldest son has this thing called Dream Park, which with a Quest 3 headset, you can go and you can be in Mario Land and wander around and punch blocks and get coins. And if you're on a tricycle, you're Mario Kart. And it's just damn fun, you know. I mean, and then my other son has the Quest classes, and so he's showed me why he likes it, because he says, he shows me a whole bunch of pictures. He says, I couldn't have taken this with my kids if I had to be holding a son or a phone.
Yeah.
Now I just looking at it and click it, and all of a sudden it's doing it. So I basically just ordered a pair an hour and a half ago. So, you know, the Quest glasses are, I guess it's the Meta glasses. I'm a big fan now, you know.
That's really cool stuff. I can imagine what things are going to be like when everyone's got a pair, right? Like how much video do you see online nowadays? And then if everyone is wearing glasses, it's going to be even more predominant, right? You don't even have to bring your phone out anymore, and it'll be less obvious as well, right? Like how many times do you see, you know, a video where there's people recording someone in trouble, and it's like, okay, well, now I got my glasses on, that can actually help them instead, right? So I got 2 hands to help someone. Okay, so let's move on to background in video games. So Nolan, tell us something interesting about your background in video games, from, you know, Atari, Pong, Chuck E. Cheese. What's the most exciting moment you recognize that helped you to see that you had a home run with your business?
Well, I think what I found is that we were kind of lucky because we started in the coin-operated game space.
Yeah.
And one of the aspects of that is we had feedback of what people liked. And, you know, it was very easy. You count the quarters at the end of the week, and if they liked it, the coin box was full, and if they didn't like it, it wasn't. And so what we learned is that if we could create games that kept you in the state of flow, there's a guy who wrote a book called, he was Hungarian, name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. When I bastardized the name.
Try spelling that. Probably not easy.
He talks about flow. If you can keep somebody engaged by keeping the game hard but doable, so that you're right at the edge of your capability. And so that's why as you get better with the game, we make it difficult. That's why phase 1 pretty easy. Phase 2, harder. Phase 3, harder. Then the boss comes along, really, really hard, you know. Yeah. And so using that technology to teach kids, get kids in flow about learning. And that's kind of where Exodexa is right now. We are doing a pretty good job of, we've been able to have good educational content with kids in the state of flow for over an hour, which we consider to be kind of a great test, because the attention span of a typical high school student is less than 20 minutes. So we've been able to exceed that by almost 3x.
That's amazing. And that's, I assume, across both males and females, because I'm assuming that the attention span for males is probably lower than females, I would guess. Is that accurate?
It's accurate, but it's actually harder to be. It depends on how much physical activity. Mm-hmm. If you meld physical activity with learning, the boys do a really, really good job, actually a little bit better.
Okay.
But if it's more passive, if it's more sedentary, then the girls beat the guys every time.
Interesting. Okay. And so you're building all of this knowledge into Exodexa, so that's really cool. Is there anything else you can expand on with regards to Exodexa? How soon will it be before you get to market, or is that something you can not share yet?
Well, we're probably halfway there.
Okay.
We're hoping that we're going to be ready for the beginning. We're going to be totally rock and roll when school starts next year.
Nice.
But in the interim, we're starting with grades 9 and 10.
Okay.
So, and that's kind of where the wheels start coming off, and we're doing that strictly for marketing reasons. That's where homeschoolers and things like that, where there's a huge demand. And it's a SaaS model, software as a service, $19 a month, and we'll be all locked and rolled, ready to go.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a good age demographic, because that's really where kids are trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do with my life, and what's interesting to me. So if you're able to get them in that moment, I think that could be very helpful. That's great.
But that also raises a very, 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 very difficult question that is very unique to right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because of AI, the jobs that are going to be available in 10 years or 5 years are going to be unpredictable.
Right.
And so whenever there's a change agent, the best strategy is to be as close to the change agent as you can. Because at the very least, you're going to know the capabilities of the change agent. And so what we're trying to do is to put as much AI and teach kids how to use AI and to master the power that it gives you as a way to accept it. I've often felt that I was lucky that when I graduated with an engineering degree, I felt that I wanted to be next to the change agent. And therefore, I moved from Utah, where I was born and raised, to Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. And I really think that was very, very, it was one of those, what I call happy accidents that kind of led to the video game.
Nice. Yeah, I remember someone saying, I can't remember who it was. They basically said that you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to the person who uses AI better than you, right? Like, you use AI as a tool, right? And that's the way we need to look at it. My son was in the unfortunate situation where he got into 2D animation. And so you can imagine with Gen AI everywhere, it's like, okay, well, that industry has dramatically changed overnight, right? So now he's like, okay, well, I'm going to go to get a job as a computer tech now, because people always need to get their computers fixed, and that's probably not going to get taken over by AI. So it's probably AI proof. So that's the way people have to look at their work moving forward, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so Darcy, let's move on to you. So tell us something interesting about your background, from the world's fastest gamer to What the Fast. What's the standout story from turning gaming passion into a high stakes competition?
I'll tie the two together in a second, but obviously kind of continuing what I said earlier, bringing somebody from their couch or their bedroom or somewhere at home playing a game to the seat of a race car going 200 miles an hour is, that's quite the journey. And it's not just racing. So, well, I'll talk about that because we had most experience there, but just turning a gaming passion or just gaming in period. I mean, that's part of everybody's DNA. What is there? 3.4 billion gamers. So it's not like an outlier. I think 68% of people in the US play games, and that's probably not even seen. I mean, they don't count the over 45-year-olds, and I'm one of them. So let's take that number up, right? So that just tells me that, same as, when people read books, if you were book smart and you could learn things, you could get along in life and move a lot further. And I think the gamified experiences are going to do the same thing for all kinds of markets. In the racing case, once we figured out how to make racing and simulation close to the real thing, then the next logical part of the journey was putting people in that experience and seeing, how far they could go. And even our first year of putting that out there, we realized that maybe not every kid was going to be that race car driver. And in fact, very few of them, got to that level, but everybody had a shot at it. And before we were doing this, I was taking my kids around in a trailer full of, race equipment and going around the western part of the US trying to find tracks for them to race on. And, when we figured out sim racing, I was doing that, 1/10 of the time. They still had to get out and do behind the wheel, at some point, if you want to be that person. But what we realized in millions of kids playing over the years, and we watched their behavior and their outcomes, a lot of them just became enthusiasts. They weren't an automotive enthusiast, and then they were. And then a lot of them became more interested. They became mechanics and engineers and designers, and they weren't all getting behind their wheel. They were all doing something that was a part of the passion. So, why not do that in other simulation experiences? And of course, now we're seeing a lot more simulation coming out. But even if you looked at The Sims and SimCity and those things, people understood things they never understood before. What was urban planning?
Right.
You're building in SimCity something, we're building the city, and you had to know there was pipes in the ground and there was asphalt on the surface, and you had to build curbs and communities. And, you saw a lot of kids coming out of those games that kind of went into those areas of urban planning and things. And when I came out of school, out of engineering, they had none of that, but I was able, I was right on the cusp of a computer fill in a room at the university to me having that same compute in my office. And now I've got it on my phone, but same equivalent at least. And so I think that, this convergence between video games, education, learning, skills development, whatever you want to call it, and where the population is, just pure desire and knowledge of how to use the tools, is natural that this is the next generation of education. And, going from esports, just playing for fun and actually learning, that's simulation for us, for me at least. Simulation puts it down on the ground, makes it real. You get behind a force feedback wheel and it feels like you're on a track. The pedals are bouncing. If you have motion in the simulator, you're getting a little bit of the feedback from what would be the tires and wheels. And, if you didn't have to put time into your parents driving you around before you realized you did or didn't like that. And I think the same things when you get in higher level of education, you're not really wasting your time. You're probably, by the time you get to that grade 9, 10, 11, 12, you realize where you're going to be. If that simulation game is helping you get there, then we're all in for, bringing that at scale to the education business. And that's, I think simulation for us is the key to unlocking that, at least for what we're talking about, because it's trade skills. It really is. you said something about hands-on and doing things. You eventually have to do that, and you've got to put on something, a headset or be immersed with haptics or whatever. That's all here now. It wasn't that even 5 years ago. What it just came out of my mouth was $1 million to figure it out, and now it's a few tens of thousands to get kids moving through the chain of taking games, turning them into interest and passion, and then turning that into a career.
So I take you just gave me a blast to the past when we were working on a coin-op game that had the very first feedback on a steering wheel, and we were having this conversation. There was actually a group of engineers who said, "That's not going to make the game any more fun." And the other guy says, "No, that's real. We need it." So it was one of those funny things that, like everything, there's people who are advocates and people who are naysayers.
Yeah.
They all have to come together between motion and virtual reality and haptic feedback and all the things. I mean, those are all of our senses. That's all it's doing, is giving the game, some kind of sense for us. And better that more of it happens. Will it ever be 100% that you don't have to get behind the wheel or learn how to weld or, no, you always have to have that last little piece behind, but it's so close. It used to be, 20, 30%. Now it's 80, so I feel we're moving to a place where that last, whatever it is, hands-on is going to be a very small, 10% of your time. And you've already done everything else before you're even graduated high school. So, all that school is just going to compress into this 1 year of time I got to spend really engrossing myself in that thing I just played games with and learned about everything about it in the last, high school years and middle school years too.
So Darcy, can you tell me more about the skills gap you're trying to close with Fiber Gaming Network?
Yeah, there's a couple layers. So just abstract, there's 7.68 million jobs today in the US for some level of skills. Some of them it's skilled trades and others, but they can't fill them because they don't have the skills. They don't have the knowledge. There's just not enough people, first of all, that are in the normal, I graduated from school, now I'm in post-secondary somewhere and I'm learning something. There's only so much that trickles out of that's actually real skills. You can see now there's a transition from funding, white collar learning to blue collar learning, because it's a thing. I mean, we have this 8 million, I'll just use a round number, of demand. And if all this money that's supposed to pour into our economy to build new things, data centers and manufacturing plants and roads and bridges to get to those places and, upgrading our infrastructure, the pressure is going to double and triple. That 8 million is going to be 16 million real soon, and it's going to be bigger. And then you have you also have the retraining of people because they're being displaced from the knowledge, the information jobs. Now they're going to knowledge jobs and they're going to these hands-on trade experiences. That's a real number. The one that hits the ground for me in our business, which is, working with network operators, they have their own need. Right now there's 80,000 jobs for fiber optics installers in the country because they're all putting fiber into the homes. Well, all this federal funding going out to these operators isn't going anywhere if you can't get anybody to operate the backhoe or fuse the fiber or, do all these other jobs. And I was just at a conference last week where that number actually that I thought was 80 is somewhere near 200 million or 200,000, sorry. So 200,000 jobs just in one industry that's right adjacent to us, and it's our customers. If we can solve some of that by providing, these immersive, virtual, augmented experiences and some level of simulation. And by the way, I don't think there's a big challenge to teaching somebody how to fuse some fiber together. I mean, if you can teach people how to race a 200-mile-an-hour car around a track, I think fusing fiber will be, it's a little more intimate and a little more detailed, but the tools we have to create those experiences are already there. In fact, I can talk an experience. I can make a 3D experience, get 80% there without me programming or go into a pool of developers or any of that anymore. That final piece, you have to still have some skills, you know, to know what a 3D object is and how to take that thing that the AI made that's got 1 million triangles and make it into something that's got 1,000 so it doesn't kill your system. But outside of that, the tools are there. I can create any experience for these, we'll call them simulation experiences, very quickly now. And those detailed ones that they call serious gaming, because we're in the sim gaming, not serious gaming. That's what companies like Caterpillar are doing, or Lincoln Welders. They're taking the final experience that's hands-on and trying to compress that even further by giving you a virtual reality experience or something augmented. So you can see your hands in there and they're the real hands, not the game hands, and that kind of stuff. That's happening at scale right now. Within the next 5 years, it'll just be happenstance that you just go into a simulator and you go from 60% completing your classes that you came out of high school with and 80, and now the school just has to take you 20% there. And having the fact that our customers need those 200,000 people right now, we're going and doing it. So they don't know how to do it. They got a bunch of books and a bunch of videos of people fusing things. That actually helps. If I feed that into a machine learning system, it can actually come back with some amazing graphics and starting points that you would have had to spend months, maybe even years, just developing storyboards and stuff. That's under the water. I mean, there's no people that are building storyboards anymore. You just talk through them, and the machines learn what you're doing. So to cap it off, I'm excited that there's a deficit, because that gives us this opportunity right now, and I think the deficit's going to get bigger. And I think that kind of takes us back to maybe grade 9, maybe even middle school, 8 and 9.
Yeah.
We start working on them now. The jobs are already going to be there. They're already there now. It's just you got to get the kids, probably their junior and senior years is really where you got to get them. They're making those career decisions. They've already got some STEM education. They played the sim games, but now you're really telling them you're not just playing for fun and prizes, you're playing to learn. And that's where we're, figuring out what we're doing at Fiber Gaming Network is what is that perfect place where you transition them from just playing for fun to learning. It's still having fun, but now you're really figuring out where I'm going to be at 40% of my learning achievement by the time I graduate, and I'm going straight to that job or that trade school. And that's, that's our challenge across all industries. So we're doing that right now.
Well, I think that one of the things that really help us, if we can get rid of myths. And the big myth that I think is the most dangerous right now is that you need to go to college in order to be successful. Starting your life with $200,000 worth of student debt is really a bad starting point. Particularly, a lot of these kids are using college as a way to extend their adolescence.
Great place to go party, right?
A place to go party, and hey, I was part of that. I was a member of a fraternity, and I drank a lot of beer and chased a lot of women. And but in those days, I graduated from college with no debt because college cost me $250 a quarter. Now, I'm an old fart, so that was a long time ago, and I went to a state school. But I think that today, if we could give the message that these other jobs are much better than understanding the mating habits of the tsetse fly, as a major, that kids would be a lot happier in their early adolescence.
You could probably learn basket weaving virtually and no longer have to take it at college.
Well, the white collar jobs, you hit the head, they're already dry. So by the time you get out of 4 years of school, you might as well do something else. And the trade jobs, like I had the same stigma. I came out of engineering. I did that because I wanted to be an engineer, but also because I didn't want to be pouring concrete or doing stuff that I was doing in my summer jobs.
Right.
But you know what? Today, and those jobs weren't they were much more high paying. That separation between blue and white was big. It's not anymore. In fact, it's better. I mean, we're leaning heavily into training commercial drivers for trucking. We got some really good simulation games for it. It's just another driving game for me. But that, I have a stigma about truckers myself. Shame on me. Probably more about the income. I didn't realize, average trucker today coming out of 1 year, fresh, is making 70 grand a year. The guy making 120 is 5 years. And the guy making 150, 200 has got some more stickers on his license because he's carrying hazardous cargo or something. And they're coming right out of high school. In 6 months, they're making that. That's, 200,000 debt takes you 10 years to get rid of, maybe more. You don't have any of that burden, and hopefully you like the job. That's why I think games are important, because I think if you like it or good at it by grade 12. Right. Be it a trucker or welder or whatever you're playing the games and learning, you're set up for it. The other way around, you don't know until you get out of school, and then you go to a trade school, and 40% of the kids that go to trade schools drop out in their first semester. That's a big number. Why? Because they're not ready for what they thought it was something different, or they left home. If you're playing those games and you've got a propensity for that, I think it helps. And even earlier, if you can get them earlier, at some point it's baked in. You feel like you're going to be that backhoe operator, that truck driver, that welder. And that's, I'm going into really the heavy hands-on skills. Soil scientists, farming, agriculture is now precision agriculture. It's not just driving a tractor. You got to know soil science and rain patterns. And so I do believe that, I don't just believe, I know that what we're doing between these two efforts is going to be the only way you're going to learn, because the schools just can't figure it out fast enough anyway. And they were built for old school education, and that transition's hard to overcome for the majority of today's, standard education systems. They just can't do it.
So it sounds like we got two topics here. So Darcy, with FGN, you're focused on the blue collar jobs like truck drivers and whatnot. Whereas Nolan, you're focused more on the white collar jobs, but leveraging AI as part of the education. No? Okay.
No, I'm really, if you really look at life, the more you can have a entrepreneur's brain. And so think of yourself as creating a business in which you're providing a service and getting paid for it. Not by the hour, but by the project. And so that really fits with blue collar as well. When you drive down the highway, what do you see? Joe's Plumbing Service, what have you. I actually want to disagree a little bit. I'd be worried about truck driving, because I think that we are within 5 years of total autonomy.
That's a good point.
And that and when it happens, it's going to happen very, very quickly, because it's going to be driven by insurance rates. That the minute a autonomous vehicle shows a significant safety benefit, then all of a sudden the difference in cost of a censored vehicle, particularly if Tesla with its all, you can kind of look at a Waymo with their sweet, $100,000 worth of sensors versus a Tesla that has, $5 worth of sensors, but some pretty serious AI behind it. All of a sudden that really changes the economics, and insurance is going to really be a big factor in that.
I agree. I would say in trucking, just to close that, the problems today. So the federal government just fired 190,000 truckers because they didn't know how to speak or read English, and that's not good for the highways. And there's lots of, we said, safety problems that already started happening, people dying on the road. Regardless, there was already 117,000 jobs. Now there's do the math, over 300,000 jobs right today. So I agree that autonomous trucks are coming. There's going to have to be some new road lanes built. I mean, problem out in the high freeways and interstates is different than a Waymo car making its way in traffic at 30 miles an hour when you got a 75-mile-an-hour rig trying to go around traffic. And it's not the truck and the autonomy of the truck. It's the network too. So we'll talk about that in 1 second, but it's all the other people that are going to cut it off and do stupid stuff that they do in the highways. So once they figure out that dedicated lane or something like that, they can go as fast as they want at that point, because they're just going to line up like a train and go. And you don't need any other than the off ramp where they have to go delivery. The rest of it's just straight line stuff and stopping for gas. And no, you don't have to stop for the hours. After 11 hours, truckers got to stop.
Mm-hmm.
What if you can go 24 hours a day? All of a sudden your capacity doubles, more than doubles if you're going 24 hours a day. So there's lots of, you said it, insurance, time on the road, all this stuff's going to change dramatically over the next decade for sure.
Well, I was going to mention, I was talking to a guy who basically, he and his wife became team truckers.
Mm-hmm.
And they sold their house and they just basically lived on the road for 2 years, and they were knocking down $300,000 a year.
Yep.
And I say 300,000 for a couple. And what I didn't realize is that there's a premium for getting a truck there in a big hurry. So if the truck is constantly going, there's a premium for that. You get a bonus.
Yep. If you look inside those new trucks that they're probably using, it's not a bad ride. It's got some pretty modern amenities. I saw a couple a few weeks ago at a show, and I mean, this is a motorhome. This is not a truck anymore. It's beautiful. The cab behind, I mean, they had a kitchen in it and a bathroom, and they're on their way. So yeah. And if they own the truck, then they're even making more money. So, and by the way, one other thing, where your idea of AI in this crossover is the people that are at the NOC managing the trucks that are driving down autonomously down the highway. Those are people that had to understand trucking in the first place.
Right.
They need to react to some, whatever that situation is. And that's how Waymo started. You used to have a guy sitting wasn't driving, but he was sitting there because he had to grab the wheel if something went sideways. I think you might see that transition too. Maybe that'll be in the trucker so he can sleep and just wake up whenever there's a problem. But I think eventually there still has to be smart people back at HQ or at the NOC that manage it. Yeah, it's going to be a 1 to 100 or 1 to 10 ratio still. But right this second, if we can start graduating kids, and we've already looked at this whole curriculum and everything for trucking, you can get out of school with about 40% of your time and your book stuff already retired. So the rest of it's just that next intense level where you should be behind the wheel or in a school, but with a person who's competent and a certified instructor. But even that 40%, two things it does. You already know you can shrink that much time in the time they got to be, between when they get their license. But you also get rid of most of that churn. That first semester is also coincidentally a 40% number, because they churn out, they stop, they quit. Well, you don't have that anymore in the schools. If they're putting through 40% in a semester and they're going away, so they're only achieving 60%, even though their school's still full. So it's really a throughput and capacity issue. And I think the simulation training is going to take that funnel and really get it fast through the bottom and get those truckers out on the road so we can deliver all the materials for all this, economic development that's in front of us.
Well, there's also another factor about the human being being in the truck, and the security card as well. But sometimes the content of the truck can be worth a couple $100,000. And so that could be a target for the bad guys.
Yep.
And if you have an armed security person, even if they're not driving, they're watching over the goods.
Yep.
That's a good point.
Dead on. So
So instead
yeah,
of training as this truck driver, train as a security guard is what you're saying.
both.
But it sounds like, generally speaking, you both agree that, AI is definitely a thing, and you need to either learn how to use AI to benefit yourself in your employment, or find a job that isn't going to be challenged by AI. And you made a good point about truck driving. That might be gone in 5 years if everything goes autonomous. So that's definitely an interesting topic. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of changes over the next 5 years. So let's go back to learning. So how do you see Exodexa benefiting learning? Maybe expand on it a little bit, and why I think it sounds like it's going to be improving and changing learning compared to the traditional system. Is that accurate?
Not just that. It turns out that we can teach kids almost 10 times faster with better retention, 20 days after. And once you do that, then you say, okay, what else do we teach?
Mm-hmm.
And the typical high school student has very, very little financial literacy,
Okay.
very, very little understanding of entrepreneurship. How do you form a company? What's the deal? What's an LLC? What's a C Corp? I can remember having conversations with my boys about stock ownership and things like that. In his high school, even though they've been around me all their life, I was amazed how little they understood about the actual ability to form their own company. And right now, every one of my kids is an entrepreneur. Every one. Boys, girls, what have you. And so I think that in the world that we're coming up on, a lot more entrepreneurship is going to be necessary, because one of the things that humans are good at is seeing a need and fulfilling it if they're looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we can train kids how to look for it and to create their own jobs.
So it sounds like you're saying that it's possible for anyone to be an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Well, it was very interesting. I did some volunteer work for a group that was doing remediation to convicts. And it was a 6-month program, 3 months while they were still behind bars, and then 3 months after they were out on the street. And one of the big issues around felons is recidivism. And that if you gave them job skills, you could drop recidivism to a third. And so there was all kinds of state money that was really pushing for that sort of stuff. And so my part in it was to talk to the people, the convicts, about how do you get a job. And I'd be very candid with them. I said, there's some people you're not going to be able to get a job because you're a felon. Mm-hmm. So forget being a security guard or a bank teller,
Mm-hmm.
But I said, there's a lady in my neighborhood that's making $100,000 a year. And you know what she does? She walks dogs.
Okay. Interesting.
And they said,
and how much was that? How much money?
$100,000 a year.
Oh, nice.
and I how I knew is that she was walking, and she had about 6 dogs on leash, and they were all coming along. And I said, hey, how much do you charge to walk my dog? And she says, well, how often do you want me to walk them? And I said, well, 3, 4, 5 days a week. he says, okay, I can do that. I generally charge $20 a day per dog.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, but if you sign up for a lot, I can give you a slight discount on that. So I just went through the math of how many dogs she had,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that she only walked them for about an hour and a half. And so she was basically making $150 an hour.
Nice.
20 dogs.
She's got her own subscription model going there for walking dogs. That's pretty cool.
There's a walking dog app somewhere that I saw. I don't know if you know the kid Ryan Trahan, but he's on social, and he was trying to get across the country with a penny, and he was getting these odd jobs, and he did this in every city, dog walking. That's right. What you just said. He was getting $40 for half an hour, like just and ad hoc jobs. He's just picking them up on this app, and then when he got better rating, he got more money, and people were paying him crazy money to just even walk their dog for an hour. So yeah, it's yeah, and they're entrepreneurs. You pick up an app and you got a job. So that crowdsourced type of stuff is really, I think, how everybody's going to end up making their money in the future.
Nice.
The fact that there's Uber drivers now that are strictly DoorDash, that didn't exist 2 years ago.
No,
not that I knew of anyway.
Nope.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Darcy.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think you have to be in a big city for that to work. In the city where we're from, it's pretty tiny. I think it's pretty hard for an Uber driver to make a living here.
Yeah. Well, like he said, Nolan said, there's been, it was driving and now it's delivery. And, I just sent some documents the other day. It was called Uber Letter or something. And they're kind of consuming everything that has to do with anything delivery. So the delivery drivers, the old days, those guys are gone. They had purpose-built delivery services. They're probably still that person, but now they're an Uber driver too.
Yeah.
The AI stuff that I really see affecting, what we're into with this education it's personal again. I guess if you look at the history of education, everybody was learning. They were on a farm. They were doing something with their parents. That's how you learn. You didn't learn in an institution. And then all of a sudden you had the country schoolhouse, and there's a teacher that had learned something, and they were going to impart that on your community and your kids. And you had to send your kids there because they weren't coming to your home. Otherwise they wouldn't have enough time to teach all the kids. So that's the school system still today. It's this aggregation point called the school that you go to and you get normalized. It's completely normalized. I don't care what you're learning. I pulled my kids out of school, by the way, Nolan, when they were in middle school, and they never went back because they were homeschooled, but we traveled too. So, I've always been a fan of that. But even today, it's still the norm where you got to go to this aggregation point and get normalized. In this distributed thing, everybody can have an agent. It's your personal tutor, and it could come in the form of a person now. Like, you can look and talk and walk just like us. Maybe not walk, but feels personal. And it is your personal tutor, and it knows what you learned yesterday, and it knows what to do. In a classroom, you don't get any of that. Maybe this few kids get some treatment, but in general, it's like I said, it's normalized. And it really is an education. It's just putting kids through a system. This one-on-one that an agent that knows what you're learning and can adapt to you and take you through different ways of learning. You didn't learn this way, so I'm going to do something else to get you through this lesson. That's that can be done now already. And I think AI is going to just move the learning back to the end of the pipe, the end of the broadband connection in your home. And hopefully the problem there is daycare, because your parents are still working, but I think society will change enough that won't even be a thing. You can lock your kids down in your home and they'll be safe, and the robots will beat them if they need to. So
well, I took my kids out of school and took them to Europe for a year, which I think was the best thing I ever did as a parent, because we were in London for 3 months, and then Scandinavia for a month, and Amsterdam for a month, Copenhagen for a month, and Rome for a month, and France for a month. And I actually used the museums as, the British Museum, I'd use a room a day. We'd go through and really dissect what was going on. I mean, the Museum of Science and Industry in London was wonderful.
Yep.
And I can honestly say, I didn't understand the First World War until I went to the British War Museum in London.
Yep.
Where they actually had simulated trenches and trench warfare and all that. And I just think that there's so many assets that are real and visceral and powerful that all we have to do is figure out a way to do it.
I'm laughing because what you just described was my wife's journey. Because I mentioned we took our kids out of school, and I was working around the world, 27 countries. I had to get to in 12 months of the year. So we said, pack up the kids. And I was fortunate enough, we were just developing K-12. Our investors, Bear Stearns, was invested in this online charter school called K-12. And Bennett, who came out of the Clinton administration, was very big on, alternative learning, especially these charter schools. So we were the guinea pigs for that program, and our kids, they still had books, unfortunately. It wasn't all digitized yet. So, but everywhere we were, they picked it up. And you had said one thing about learning. Our kids are all like 2 years apart, so different grades, but core learning, whether you're in grade 2, 4, or 6, you're learning about Egypt, but just at a different level. That's what core does, right? Well, my wife would take them to the British Museum if we were in London or whatever place we're in, and try and get them into that room that was exactly what they're learning at the time. And they learned a lot because they were putting their hands on things and seeing the stuff. And, it wasn't just out of a book. So they really were immersed in it. They got to go to countries and those kind of museums where they would just have been learning in a book back home. So that lit me up about everything we're talking about today. I've had this passion since then because I just believe that digital is, it's advanced so far now, and we don't have to worry about technology. We just have to worry about delivery and, conversion, because the system still wants to put those kids in that classroom and put books in front of them. And, that'll be okay, I guess, for some, but I don't think that'll be the majority. I think that'll turn over here in the next 5 years.
I agree. And being an engineer, I'd like to say that sometimes when you're teaching a kid, bandwidth is important. And when you're seeing, touching, and experiencing and everything, there's more bandwidth,
Yep.
And that's got to be better for your brain.
Yeah.
Human bandwidth.
And it sounds like you guys have come up with a good solution to like dramatically improve the online learning experience, right? So if you have the personalized AI tutor, so students can actually get that personalized attention that they need, right? If you're in a class of 30 people, there's a lot of students that just get left out. And then if you have the the simulation or the VR experience, you can actually maybe not physically be there, but be as close as possible in a simulated experience. That's also very beneficial to the learning experience. So that all sounds really good to me. Do you guys have any additional feedback regarding the challenges of schools today, or do you think you solved all the problems already with these technologies?
Well, until we can achieve the Vulcan mind meld, I think we have a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point.
Yeah, and the system needs to get upended. I mean, we can't do it ourselves. It has to come from the inside. Comes from government. Comes from just demand. I guess I'm not a fan. I have no opinion one way or other whether a federal or state or local system works better, but we shouldn't have all these layers between the kid and what the achievement was. In Europe, by the way, has been doing this. Germany, especially, for decades. When you're in your sophomore year of high school, exactly what your career path is. You're not guessing what you're doing at at the end of grade 12 and trying to scramble to figure what school you're going to, what career. I mean, some kids know it already, but in general, you go to those countries, they know. They didn't have a choice. You just came from Japan or China. You don't have a choice in those places, what your education is going to be, what the outcome will be. That's not what we're suggesting, but we're opening it up. Now you can say, okay, I'm playing a game to start. I'm not learning. So I've already got a passion for whatever I'm doing. If it's race games or farming simulator or truck sim, who cares? The kid's playing it, they've got some interest. And there's 15 million farming simulator players in the US. So I got to believe that there's enough kids to fill the combine seats and be soil scientists if you really started to teach them like we want to do. So it's just taking the passion they already have for something and transforming it from a fun entertainment experience to also an education experience. And if you can have those tutors and these other tools that keep pushing them or pulling them into this experience, it's great. I mean, I wish I would have had an AI tutor when I was going through, what I did. And I was lucky enough. I was in an engineering school that had co-op. So every semester I got off. It took me 6 years to get my engineering degree, but I had every second semester off because I had to earn my money. I didn't have any silver spoon in my mouth. I didn't, I did what I did on my own, and having that student debt would have just killed me, so I didn't have any of it because I worked every second semester, and I was actually working in, civil engineering. So if I would have hated it, I probably wouldn't have made it through the first co-op period. But it's the same thing as it wasn't simulation. It was real. They were throwing me into the job, but that's where I think I got that feeling through that co-op system of what simulation can be today. So
my two best engineers at Atari came from Berkeley, and they were on the work study program.
Same thing. Yep.
Same thing.
Yep.
And I think that I used to say, you work in industry and it gives you questions, and then you go to school and then you answer them. So learning abstractly is not nearly as important as learning concretely.
That makes sense. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So we've already touched on a lot of the topics that I wanted to cover. I guess we can get to the end, switching gears for fun. Are the Blue Jays going to beat Seattle tonight? What are the thoughts on that? It's Game 7.
Be good for a Canadian team to come into the big show. So hopefully they do. I'm not a fan of either team, but I think the underdogs should win. Although are they both underdogs? I don't think either of them ever been to the finals.
Well, the Blue Jays have been there before, but it's been a while though. I'm not sure how long it's been, but yeah, of course I'm cheering for the Blue Jays.
Yeah,
no surprise.
I am probably the biggest fish out of water here.
Okay.
My dad said, play or don't play, but don't watch.
Oh, you don't watch sports is what you're saying.
I have never been to a professional sporting good. Baseball, football, hockey. Oh, I'll take it back. I went to one hockey game in Detroit because my main franchisee from Detroit bought the Red Wings, Detroit Red Wings, the hockey team, and I was in his skybox.
Okay.
That's my one exception. I've also never caught a fish.
Okay.
So,
and coming from Utah as well, right?
Yeah. But I was this close to being an Olympic skier back in my days.
Oh, nice.
Well,
Which kind of skiing?
Downhill.
Okay. Nice.
And I could do slalom pretty well, but I could really do bumps. And the reason is that the greatest snow on earth was a half hour from the University of Utah. So all winter long, I would have my labs on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the mornings, and I'd be out by noon, and I'd be on the slope by 1 o'clock, when half-day passes came online, and with the student ID at two of the slopes, you'd get a half-day pass for $1.
Wow.
Nice.
So I need 2 half-days and a full day on Saturday or Sunday all winter.
Beautiful.
Nice.
But you're in it, not watching it.
Yeah, I was there.
You're
I
in
was
it.
there doing it. And, Utah has this powder that literally you can be up to your knees in powder. And it's really good, except when there's a tree under there.
Oh, yeah.
Stump.
Yeah, I've seen some bad stories of people getting stuck in tree wells. That's not a fun thing.
I actually had a friend whose son died in a tree well.
Oh, no.
He got upside down and suffocated.
Yeah. No, it's not
Sad.
fun.
Not fun.
Yeah. So we already predicted that there's going to be autonomous semi-trucks in the next 5 years. Do you guys have any other tech predictions for the next 5 years?
I think that the minute we have true autonomous vehicles, that urban planning is going to change, and that the cost of owning a car will be so much higher than just using the autonomous services, robotaxis, what have you, that I think that parking lots, that we're going to need a third, if not 10% of what we currently have.
Probably less vehicles as well, right?
Exactly. And I think that there's going to be a real advantage to what I call gardening cities, which means that when you have an autonomous vehicle, it's very easy to dig down 2 meters and berm over a meter, and what is a downtown area, take all the transportation, put it underground, and then all of a sudden, all the streets look like a park, and you can have cafes that spin out and what have you. And I think that a city that has no traffic that you can see will be quiet and beautiful, and I think that it will slowly take over.
That's interesting. That's actually pretty cool. It sounds sci-fi, but I mean, it actually doesn't seem that far away, right? If you look at a lot of the stuff that Elon Musk is working on, I think it's within reach, I think.
Well, now think of the second point. Instead of windows, you now have video screens.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go to work every day, you can go to work traveling down the streets of Rome or the streets of Manhattan or the Old West.
Mm-hmm.
So your transportation can now be a vehicle to explore history or fantasy or what have you.
Or play video games.
Or play video.
Just imagine driving in a autonomous vehicle, like playing like a zombie shooter game or something on your way to work. So what about you, Darcy?
I'm going to just say one thing about autonomous stuff, and it plays into everything we talk about real time. None of it happens if we got crappy, high latency, high packet loss networks.
Yeah.
So we're going to solve that problem. I mean, we talk gaming a lot, and of course, gaming is going to help because that's how you map out these digital twins of all these cities and create, these new opportunities for underground transport or whatever it's going to be. So we pretty much have a digital twin of our world now, if you really put all of NVIDIA's stuff and Google stuff and everything together. So from the car, autonomous vehicle, trucks, cars, I agree with Nolan, it's coming, then we have all the tools to do it. It's just the will. And probably some transformation. It doesn't happen overnight. mine kind of plays into that. I think there's no phones. Cell phones are gone, and maybe it's not 5, but for sure 10 years. Why would you have it if you have such an intuitive device like I'm wearing here? It's heads up. It's always there. It comes on and off depending on what you say to it. It's all natural language processing. There's no keyboards. There's nothing. That's my prediction, is no mobile phones and no keyboards for anything. So that's a big step. I mean, for sure the visual. I mean, everything data, everything learning, everything entertainment can be right here. And
the crazy thing about it is if you can have the tap into the AI as well, right? Like, how smart can everyone seem to be, right? If you have AI in your glasses,
you have an answer for everything.
Yeah.
You know, I already have an answer for everything. It's called, whatever my search engine is. Perplexity just made Comet, the search engine, and I don't use Google anymore, because I don't care about their opinions on what they think I want to see. I just want to know how to get to what I want. And Comet's just crazy. I mean, not only does it tell me what I'm looking for, it gives me anything out. I can just continue to prompt it, and it tells me history of something, or options for something else to buy, or a different price somewhere. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to Google anything. Googling is over. I'm sorry to say, but that, of course, Google will figure out the stuff. They've got Gemini and their own ways to get there. But I think that's the future. No cell phones, no mobile devices, other than the one that's embedded in the heads-up display we're wearing and connected to a real-time network with zero or lowest latency and lowest packet loss possible. That's what's going to bring home everything we've talked about in this call.
Now, one thing I want is Hyperloop. I want to be able to get in an evacuated tube and travel at Mach 7, San Francisco to New York, and get there in 20 minutes.
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
Well, the thing that's interesting about that is that once you get rid of losses, the maglev that accelerates the capsule, the deceleration actually puts energy back into the system. So all you have to do is replace the energy that is lost through the very little friction that there is. Because you get it back with the deceleration. And so once you get the physics, the CapEx in place, the cost approaches zero.
That's interesting. So I wonder how safe that is in the case of an earthquake.
Well, you turn into strawberry jam if it's broken.
But mind you, I guess the vacuum would just break, and maybe you would just decelerate or something, right?
I think it's worse than that.
Okay.
Because that's why I don't think we'll actually get to Mach 7.
Okay.
I think you'll get to Mach 4, and there'll be a mathematical equation as to how much you can anticipate a potential breach. And I think that all of the Hyperloop will be double cylindered. Okay. So there'll be an exocylinder and an internal. And so it's going to take a pretty violent jug to get both of them.
Okay.
And you can probably sustain for a small period of time negative G's of 4G.
Yeah.
And fighter pilots, don't they sometimes experience 8 G's of acceleration? 9, they black out. I read that somewhere. I don't mean to be, but
so that's the main problem, is that you're in a vacuum with no G's, and then all of a sudden you have a bunch of G's hit your body and you're screwed pretty much.
Right.
I think the balance between something catastrophic like an earthquake and all the other shit that happens above the earth, like storms and unforeseen things that go on in the air and on the roads, it's trivial comparison. What could happen down there? I mean, of course, you got to drill those things, but I think Boring Company and others have already proven that that's not insurmountable. We learned a lot from what they built so far So back to what you said about autonomous trucks. Maybe that lane isn't above ground. Maybe that lane is exactly what you.
Yeah, it could be.
It's underneath that highway, and we're done.
Yeah.
I've been in several of those vehicles in Vegas, and that driver is unnecessary in that car completely. They're in there because they're doing it right now, but you don't need them in there. That can go down that tunnel just fine, and they know where each other is. So, that's a big experiment, right? For what's next. I think the Boring Company doing this stuff in Vegas and some other places is. What do they have one in some tunnel they're building in Northern Europe that goes underneath, and it's cutting off the time from Finland to the UK by 10 hours or something crazy?
8. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't that big of a distance.
No.
But they figured out, and they're going to do, by the way, we're going to be connected, US and Russia, before the end of this decade, because they're going to do the same thing on the Bering Strait. It's just going to be they're already talking about it. So that's not going to be a bridge. If they build a bridge, I'll be shocked. They should just bore it and go. And you'll miss all the shitty weather and cold. You won't have to worry about it down there. You won't have to worry about ice and snowstorms and things. Just go.
That's interesting. Yeah. So I think, I guess the thing about earthquakes as well is that, they generally damage things that are above the ground, right? So I imagine that the Hyperloop would be a little bit more resilient, but I guess I'll have to dig into that a little bit. I'm looking at Grok a little bit right now to see, but I'm not gonna. I'll read that later.
Grok will be the best LLM for that because he'll have put all his ideas in there.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you're right. All right, cool. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I want to recommend something that I've been watching,
and
it's a thing by Peter Diamant. It's called Moonshots.
Okay.
He has 3 or 4 guys that all just seem smart as a whip, and they talk about the future and AI in very, very cogent ways. And I just want to give a shout out. I think we can all get smarter. Moonshots by Peter Diamant. YouTube.
Yep.
I will look that up. All right, cool. How about you, Darcy? Any closing thoughts?
I'm just looking forward to seeing this start really at scale. Like I said, I don't think there's technology barriers. I think it's will, and it's, what's next barriers. So it's just going to take a few schools, a few school districts or private, however it goes, to move it. And because the demand's there, right? We're in this demand cycle right now for trade skills.
Yeah.
You can't fill that with promises and hope. And the current system obviously doesn't meet the needs by any stretch of the imagination. So if this doesn't happen now, I don't know when it happens. There's really no barriers to any of what we've been talking about.
Well, see,
it's gotta get the curriculum done. That's, not a barrier. It's just time.
I think that it's not about curriculum. I think it's about mindset. So we create a game of life, and we have the student pick a career or a skill. And then we play it out, fast forward, of what kind of house do they live in? What kind of car, what kind of vacations do they go on?
Yep.
And I think that by taking our best data and fast forwarding it to a 15-year-old, I think that's more important than anything else they can learn.
So you're telling them, you're saying you're letting them see what the future holds, essentially, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The timing's so perfect right now. I just don't see how we fail unless we miserably mess up, the delivery, which I don't think that happens, because the delivery is gaming.
Yeah.
And it's 3.4 billion of them. So the digital natives are already ready for it. That's probably the biggest change. Not that some of the technology has been around for a long time. It's just, their willingness to learn. And now that all the money's going back to the States and they're saying you must change education in this country. We need to be leading the world instead of following.
Yeah.
I think the political will is always the one to worry about. And it's, at least for now, it's there. So, I think the teachers unions and stuff are going to have a little heartache with what we're doing. But, if you're a teacher, you should embrace this. I've got a lot of knowledge as a teacher, that's what they should be thinking. And I could use AI to take that knowledge beyond the 30 kids I teach to 3,000 kids. That they should look at it as an opportunity. And if they don't, shame on them, because that's, said it at the very beginning. It's not the AI taking your job, it's the teacher that figured it out.
Yeah, so instead of supervising kids, they can supervise the AI tutors to make sure 100%. That the kids are getting a good education.
The AI tutor is them, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a digital twin copy of them if they're good at what they do. I'll use one more analogy because I'm doing this in a golf opportunity. These golf instructors, the top guys in golf, and I'm not a golfer, by the way, but I looked at it and said, well, what's your barrier? Like, well, we can only go to so many golf courses and watch so many people swing. I'm like, AI could do that. Why don't you just use AI? So they're already doing it. This was a year ago, but that's, they didn't leave. They're still doing it, but they're just getting reports in off the AI engine that says, this is what you need to focus on. Doesn't even have to look at the videos anymore. The video was looked at by his doppelganger, his digital twin, her digital twin, and it already did the analysis. All they're doing is correcting that person's bad habits. Yeah. And they can do that in a minute. And then they go on to the next person. So instead of teaching, 3 people a day or 10 people a day, they're teaching thousands, and that scales. So, I don't see anything in the industry that can't be helped by AI, gamification, and this augmented or mixed reality experience that's in these easy to consume form factors that are, easy to put on and not just a phone that you got to clunk around with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I could see this as being a way for, the best teachers in the world to leverage themselves and actually earn more money, right? If they're able to teach more students by leveraging AI to do, and to touch even more students and do an even better job, like that's pretty amazing. And then the teachers who aren't so good, okay, well, maybe they're going to find another job because, or maybe the AI will make them better too.
What Nolan had said earlier, that's what the teacher is now. They're an LLC that knows a whole bunch of stuff. They're on their own little business, and they, you just pick them up, and you hire them or their digital twin to train in whatever you're going to be in. And that can't be done in the current school system. It's impossible.
Look, let me tell you something that's really shocking. Did you know that the teachers union will not allow you to give bonuses to good teachers?
I can believe that 100%. It's the normalization, whatever that, everybody in the middle. There's no good or bad. It's just this smudge of education, and but I'm a big critic of it, and I have been for 25 years of the current system, and it's time to change. And if we can do that, if we can do this through the simulation stuff and just hit a few key areas and the demands there, the rest will follow. Eventually it'll go that way, and we can't fight every fight. I'm not fighting for taking your kid out of school. I'm fighting for your kid when he's not in school to be learning much more than he's ever going to learn at that school. And maybe you'll tune in as a parent that that's the thing you should do. And not everybody can do it. You can't, a lot of parents have to work and they can't be at home. Then the school has to do that. Like if you go to school, why do you have to sit in the classroom with 30 other kids looking at a chalkboard? Just all the teacher should be is just trolling around looking for problems. If a kid's on his way doing things, just let him go and learn on his own pace. You can't do that in the classroom. You got to put everybody in the average, and that's not the way to educate our kids. It's been too many decades of that. We're now, I don't know what we are in the world, but we're not even in the top 50, I don't think, anymore.
Well, I just realized it's time for a commercial.
Okay. Oh, just let's see if we can see that. There we go.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Nice. There we go. Awesome. So tell us about the book.
Well, first of all, it's brilliant.
Of course.
But my co-author, who is a PhD in education, took all my scribblings about gamification and everything and codified it into a book that's actually quite readable. And it's been on Amazon for 6 months now. I'm doing quite well. And I think I'm hopeful that everybody that has bought my book will become a user of Exodexa, the
Nice.
SaaS offering. That's my knockwood.
That sounds good to me. And you said you should have that ready for market by next school year. So
Yeah.
gives you some time. So that's awesome. Cool.
So anyway, that's my commercial. Go out and buy several copies, give them to friends. They're also good. You can eat them for breakfast. And,
Well, you got a chocolate version.
you know, okay.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
I'm going to leave you with a joke.
Okay. Yeah.
My current favorite joke. Actually, I'm going to give you two.
Okay.
Little Johnny went to school. The teacher said, "Johnny, what's the difference between ignorance and apathy?" He says, "Oh, I don't know and I don't care."
There we go.
And I just got it. Sorry. A little slow.
The past, present, and future walked into a bar.
Mhm.
It was tense.
There we go. These are thinkers. That's good. People watching will be like, "Oh, you'll have to think about it for a few seconds, maybe." But that's really good. That's awesome.
What I call they're what I call jokes that take a second to make it look, because there's sort of a second quick to it. Anyway,
Yeah, no, it's all good. I like it.
okay.
How about you, Darcy? You got any jokes?
I don't have any jokes. I guess no, I don't have anything funnier than that to share.
Well, I guess you did a good job, Nolan.
I will say I just downloaded your book off of Audible, so I'll
Nice.
Thank you.
it's definitely, I'm an Audible guy. I can read obviously, but Audible is awesome because you can. My wife always asks me, you don't need to take a Uber to get where you're going. Like just drive there, like you always used to. I'm like, that hour there and the hour back is precious to me. It's more than the cost to take the Uber because I'm listening to this book or I'm doing listening to something, or reading. I don't read while I'm in a car. I usually just listen.
Me too. And I've got a couple of books that I have listened to 3 times. And, sometimes I like thick books, not thick in physicality, but thick in content. That sometimes you hear things and understand things better because you've gotten smarter in the interim. And there's one series, it's a 4-book series that I have recommended to people, and probably a third of them, it's turned into their favorite book. 2/3 hate it. And I don't know why, but excuse me. It's called Hyperion. It's by Dan Simmons.
Okay.
And it is a very interesting book about futures and philosophy. And I was a philosophy minor in college. You say, what's a double E doing with a minor in philosophy? Well, it was just something I liked. And so I can talk Hegel and Kant and Heidegger with everybody. But I've always been fascinated with the ways to construct ideas, and it crosses that barrier a little bit. But I really like it. It's a 4-book series.
Nice.
Hyperion, Fall of Hyperion, Endymion, and the Fall of Endymion. And it takes it's a 200-year span, and I find it just every time I listen to it again, I get more out of it.
Nice. I'll have to check that out. Sounds interesting.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Likewise.
Okay, guys,
Awesome.
I guess I'm out of here.
Yeah, thanks for chatting today, guys. It was great to get your insights on tech and learning. Really appreciate your time, and hope you guys have a good evening tonight.
Right.
And I guess you're not going to watch the baseball game, but I'll watch it for you.
But I really I think we should do this again.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I'll get new ideas and I'll get some new jokes.
Sure. Yeah.
No, I agree 100%. I think, look, they need some thought leadership in the spaces that we all consume. And I watch a lot and listen to a lot as you do, and I don't find a lot of people guiding this particular area. And there's a lot of people want to hear about it. I mean, I was at that conference last week, and it was, tell me more about how I can fix my problem, because I can't put any fiber in the ground without these trained people. I mean, just, and nobody's telling them in their own industry. Of course,
Right.
They don't know what I was about to tell them, but yeah, we can do a lot. I think we can do a lot of important things, keeping this conversation going. So I look forward to it.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Guys, be good.
See you guys.